Welcome back to Rock Doc's Reading Room, where I'm serializing my book, Rock Doc. All right, I've made my decision. I'm going to leave the music business, and I'm going to go and pursue my other childhood dream of becoming a doctor. But since I had left the University of Vermont and just basically walked out to become road manager for Edgar Winter's White Trash, eventually I was dismissed for low scholarship, so I had very few credits. And I was living in London, had to move back to the States, get into a college, and on from there. All right, so let's see how that all worked out. We're starting a new chapter, chapter 6, The Long and Winding Road. Like I said, leaving was easy. Reaching my goal of becoming a doctor, a hell of a lot tougher. Almost everyone I spoke to about going back to school said I would never be successful, but I was determined, and the negativity I heard just strengthened my resolve. After all, I had heard it all before in relation to the music business. You know, I dedicate the book to all those who have been told they can't. Because all along in my journey, I was told you can't. You know, you can't get into the music business. You can't quit the music business and get into medical school and be a doctor, and on and on and on. But, you know, it's up to you. It's not up to them. So be determined, believe in yourself, and you can. All right. With few college credits to my name, I felt lucky to be accepted into a pre-med program at Hofstra University in Long Island. I lived in a basement apartment close to school and worked my ass off, graduating less than 2 years later with a B+ average. You know, it was an interesting time. The basement apartment in Hempstead was right close to Belmont Racetrack, and the guy who owned the apartment was a jockey and his wife. So that was kind of interesting. I think he might have been into cocaine back in those days, but be that as it may, it was an interesting place to live. And going back to school, I was obviously older than nearly everybody in college at that time, except for the fact that this was now getting into the, 74, 75. Vietnam was starting to end. A lot of vets were coming back into school, and those are kind of the guys that I became friendly with. I became friendly with this one guy who had come back from Vietnam, another guy I think who had been in reserves, didn't go over there, and they also wanted some sort of a medical education. But it was tough. It was tough, and we were older, and we were looking at all types of medical, quasi-medical things. We were looking at chiropractic, we were looking at podiatry, but I kind of had my heart set on becoming a doctor. All right. So, Hofstra University, yeah. So, I'd grown up in Long Island, and while at Hofstra, I reconnected with a few old friends from high school. My friend Paul Schweitzer's sister had married into the family that owned the Nevele, one of the premier hotels in the Catskill Mountains, a couple of hours north of New York City. You may remember Paul Schweitzer. I talked about him. He was the one I gave him a gig as Greg Lake's roadie, and he lasted about a week and went home with all the oranges. But Paul and I, as I had said, we were very close up through high school and even went to the same college together. And we had played in bands. I also told you a story about Paul's parents' house when I was with Edgar, and we partied at Paul's. At any rate, his sister married into the Slutsky family. On the other side of the Catskills, there's, strangely enough, a couple of Slutsky families up here. There was the Slutsky family that owned Hunter Mountain, the ski area near here, and then an unrelated Slutsky family that my friend Paul's sister married into, and they owned the Nevele, and they also owned horses. They were very prominent in Monticello Racetrack. They had a horse, trotter, called Nevele Pride. It was on the cover of Time magazine. I think it's one of the winningest trotters ever, at any rate. So, Nevele. And we would go to the Nevele after his sister married into the family. We would occasionally go up there and hang out and party. And the hotel was still going on. There was entertainment. And in years to come, Paul and I had a band, and we played in the Safari Lounge at the Nevele. And yeah, you'll hear more about that. Okay, so about a year later, I began classes. Paul invited me and a group of friends to go to the Nevele for Labor Day weekend. So this is Labor Day weekend 1974. Our activities included seeing Ike and Tina Turner at Monticello Raceway, not far from the hotel. And as I said, Paul's sister was married into the family. They had big time connections at the racetrack, whatever. We had really good tickets. And a friend of ours from high school was connected, and he knew people, and I'm not sure if he had a part ownership. He may have, in a strip club right across the street from Monticello Racetrack. If he didn't have part ownership, he knew everybody there and whatever, and we said we'd meet up with him after. So it was going to be a great, fun weekend. The show was terrific, and afterwards, we all went to a strip club across from the raceway for a couple of drinks. I didn't pay much attention to the first few dancers, and then Leanne took the stage. I don't know if it was her big blue eyes or her long, sexy legs, but I became mesmerized and decided I would try to speak to her. I don't know what it is about rock and roll and strippers, but, if you look through the history of rock and roll, and certainly if you look at MTV videos, there's always been that connection. And what can I tell you? So we were at a strip club. I got very attracted to one of the strippers, and let's see what's going to happen there. Okay. When she came out of the backstage door, I was there waiting. At first, she didn't want to know about me at all. I was just another stage door Johnny. But I kept talking, and when I invited her to lunch at the Nevele the next day, her tone changed. The afternoon went well, and we started dating. There was actually a little more to the story, because when I saw her, I got blown away. And big shot that I was, music business, I told the friends that I was with, I'm going to go out with that girl. And they said, no, you're not. And I bet them $100 each. It was Paul. It was a couple other guys. And, I won the bet. At any rate, Leanne lived in New Jersey, about an hour from my apartment. And over the next year, things began to get serious. As I got to know her better, I learned that Leanne was a trained dancer and had worked in Vegas and off-Broadway and studied with some of the best teachers in New York City. Being a professional dancer was a very tough competitive business, and stripping was a good way to make extra money. I mean, she had really been quite a dancer, Vegas showgirl. She was also a Playboy bunny, and, we got along. Not a great time in my life to develop this, solid relationship, because here I am studying, preparing to go to medical school, tough road ahead for sure. Okay. We got along well. She was easy to talk to, fun to be with, and we connected spiritually. Leanne had been a chanting Nichiren Shoshu Buddhist for many years, and I was very attracted to her Buddhist way of thinking. If you don't know about that, you could look it up. We used to chant something called Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and it was a very spiritual chant based on a Buddhist sutra. Actually, a few people in the music business were into that. Tina Turner, very famously, has been a chanting Buddhist for many, many years. Herbie Hancock. And I had been attracted to different forms. What is that? Sorry about that. I had been attracted to different forms of spirituality, and this attracted me to Leanne as well. All right. Graduation from hofstra was fast approaching, and I began applying to medical schools. American medical schools had a glut of applicants in those years. Admissions committees didn't value my music business experience, and I was rejected across the board. Back in those days, it was, you want to be a doctor from the time you're born. And if you don't have all A's and everything, you ain't going to be a doctor. I was older, music business. They didn't think I was too serious, and I didn't do well in my medical school applications there, although I had done well when I went back to hofstra. Admissions committees didn't value my music business experience. I was rejected across the board. But there was still hope. A few foreign medical schools were accepting the overflow of Americans determined enough to take that difficult route toward becoming a physician. By this time, Leanne and I wanted to get married, but I worried about taking her with me on what I knew would be a long and difficult road, not only for me, but for her as well. We spoke about the hardships we both would have to endure, and Leanne assured me that she was willing and ready for whatever was ahead of us. My parents tried hard to dissuade me from getting married. They were overjoyed that I had gone back to school and deathly afraid that a new marriage would derail my efforts at becoming a physician. I appreciated their concern, but the feelings I had for Leanne were strong, and we got engaged. After careful consideration, I chose to attend the Universidad Autónoma de Guadalajara in Guadalajara, Mexico, a school sensitive to the small number of spots available in American medical schools. In fact, by its sheer number of U.S. students, Autónoma was the largest American medical school in the world. The only problem was that its courses were in Spanish. To be accepted, I first had to pass a language exam. 4 months of intensive Spanish classes helped me jump that hurdle. Leanne and I got married on July 25th, 1976, a month and a half before the semester started at the Autónoma, and we spent our honeymoon driving the 2,600 miles from New York to Guadalajara, Mexico. Yeah, and that was quite a drive. It was a lot of fun, actually, back in those days. Leanne was into amusement parks, and we tried to stop in every one along the way. But I think I'm going to stop there. Just so that you all know, we celebrated our 44th anniversary this past summer, and we're still married and going strong, don't have any children. And we'll get into all that as we get into the book. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to tell you some really interesting stories about my time in Mexico, what it was like to be an American in Mexico in the late 70s as a medical student, and also some really incredible experiences I had, which changed my life significantly. And we'll get into that in the next couple of sessions. All right. Have a great rest of the week. I'll see you next week for another episode of Rock Doc's Reading Room. And remember, always keep on rocking. And let's play this one more time. Never mind. All right. Keep on rocking and... All right. Bye now.